Hello everyone, this is a pure technical video. There I want to show you how to name subshapes in SolidWorks and how to run feature recognition in Analysis Situs and then map back the recognized features to originating CAD system. So here in SolidWorks 2024 I have a sheet metal part like this, and basically it's imported geometry. I didn't design it here, but it doesn't really matter in our context. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to label the faces in SolidWorks and then make use of those labels in Analysis Situs. If I click through the faces here in the viewer, I'll see that in the context menu I have just face here, and it basically means that the face is not named. And if I want to set a name for a face, I go to the context menu and click these face properties. Action in this dialog I can specify a name for my face. For any realistic part, this process will take hours and it's going to be error prone because there are too many faces to care about. That's why this job is better to be delegated to macro. For that I go to tools, then macro, then let's say edit, because I already have a macro prepared. I have this SWP file which seems to be like a binary file, and if I open it up here, then I have this Visual Basic script with a block of initializations or declarations. Then we have these working variables, but the core of the logic in this macro is basically to iterate over the faces of a CAD body. So what we have here, we have our active document. We use this active document as a part. We initialize selection manager, some other useful stuff, and then basically from the active part we take all the bodies and we take the first body of the part, because a part can have several bodies, so we are interested only in the first one, and we take the first face. The first face we will be using in the loop like here, and we will iterate the entire model face after face, and this is done by taking this get next face from the current one. So basically what we are doing here is we compose a name of the face as a base face name like face underscore, and we concatenate it with the integer ID. And the names that we are going to generate will be like face 1, face 2, and so on. So this is pretty straightforward. I have this macro view over here, I have this part view over here. Let me just run the macro, and as a result you see that my entire part is now selected. It means that this macro worked, it iterated all the faces in my part and it did the job. How do I check it? Is I select just like any face, let it be this whole maybe. In the context menu now I have this face underscore 41, so it does have a face name, and those names are essentially unique, because if I try to assign the same name to a face, then in UI SolidWorks would not allow me to do so, and in the macro here, if I try to use the same name as face name in selected face properties invocation, then as a result in this boolean flag I will have false instead of true for success. So now that I have all faces named, I can save this file back to a step file. So let me choose AP214. I'll store it like the same name with suffix named. That's about it. Now let's navigate over to Analysis Situs. Here I have Analysis Situs, which is like pretty independent software package. I have all the commercial plugins loaded. Sheet metal is also here. So what I can do now is I can run sheet metal feature recognition First, let's do it with the default settings. And if I do it that way, then what I have is I have this part. If I click through the faces over here, then I see that, okay, there are some indices, but basically those indices here in this part, they have nothing to do with the indices in SolidWorks. Simply because SolidWorks is based on different geometric modeling kernel, which is Parasolid in this case. In Analysis Situs we have Open Cascade apparently. So for example, phase number 9, the 9th phase iterated in my macro in this environment is phase number 6. So what it means is that if I take the recognition results from Analysis Situs, of course there are many properties reported and features like, holes, bands, engravings, whatnot. The problem is that I would not be able to use those properties because I do not really have the same IDs in SolidWorks. So if I want to interpret those properties on my part, then I have to stay in the perimeter of Analysis Situs, or more generally in the perimeter of Open Cascade kernel. But that's not always desired, and if I want to have just the same properties extracted and reported in the native CAD system, like here, then I have to make a bridge between those faces in SolidWorks and the faces in Analysis Situs. And this is doable through this naming mechanism. In order to exploit it, I have to pass here this flag, like naming. And if I do it that way, what happens is that you see now names are passed through. So basically in the JSON output I still have the same face IDs as before, so those indices they did not change, but somewhere in the end of this JSON file, in the JSON outcome, I also have this naming section that says, okay, that face number 1 here in Analysis Situs actually corresponds to face number 41 in the original step file. And this is how this mapping works. So for example, let's take this band feature. What we see is that it's face number 68, and it's also like face 68 in the step file, just by coincidence. So if I go back to SolidWorks and find the same face, you see like this is the face 68. Now let's check few more faces. So this hole over here, this is face 4, and here in SolidWorks this is also face 4. Now this band 7, SolidWorks, it's also face 7. So basically now I'm sure that I can use the information reported in the JSON file over here to associate the detected properties in SolidWorks. This is useful in many scenarios because I can run Analysis Situs on this whole feature recognition and like shape interrogation business completely without UI in batch mode, and I can in the batch mode generate this JSON outcome, and then I can create a plugin for SolidWorks to read this JSON file into the SolidWorks environment, load from these JSON files all the properties, assign them to the faces somehow, and use those properties to report like different properties essentially. Like if this part comes from step file, then I can feature recognize this part externally from SolidWorks, not using any like feature works whatsoever. And I can also use this information to have some snapping points for technical drawings if I want to generate right out of SolidWorks. So this is how we bridge Analysis Situs with originating CAD system. And this would work not only with SolidWorks, this would work also with any other CAD system, but basically allows to associate names with subshapes. So that should be doable in literally every CAD system, because this functionality of naming is super basic. So this is how we can bridge Analysis Situs with commercial CAD packages. And this naming mechanism right here, I showed it working on sheet metal part, but the same mechanism can be easily employed also for CNC feature recognition, and basically for any other feature recognition, there we have a naming service activated. So that's it, and the macro that I used in this tutorial will be published in the corresponding blog post, so feel free to go there and grab it from there and give it a try. Thanks.